a regular price when you can save money on every purchase with WagerBucks at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo. WagerBucks are now eligible for use on not just daily, 3-day, and 7-day passes, but all long-term and seasonal packages up to 1 full year. There are tons of options available for every budget and size of better. From as low as $90 gets $100, all the way up to $3,500 gets you $5,000. Save every day on every pick you buy with WagerBucks.
All right, guys, welcome in. Happy Friday to you. October the 8th. Woof. Wow, time is flying here. Week number 6 in college football. We had a little taste last night with a couple of games. We'll have a few more tonight, but of course, looking forward to a great weekend. And we've got 4 games here going to take place here over the next 24 hours. We're going to break down for you, and we're going to do it with 3 of the finest at Wager Talk. Guys, welcome in, please, if you can, Mr. Rob Veno in the house, as well as Bryan, Leonard, and of course Dave Cokin. And Rob, let me go to you first, quick. What's new and exciting with you? It's been a week since we last spoke. How's the week been, and what do you got going on at WagerTalk.com?
Yeah, the week's been good, Joe. The football last night was good. NFL came through with the Rams. Big weekend on tap. Have 5% play in college football up and available for tomorrow already, part of a 5-play college football card. Looking for a big Sunday in NFL. And tonight, 4% college football play and a 3% MLB playoff release. So a lot of action up there right now, Joe, at WagerTalk.com.
All right. Well, and Bryan, talk to us. What do you got going on there at WagerTalk.com? What's new and exciting with you?
Yeah, I got a couple of winners yesterday on the Astros and the Rams. It seems like we were all on the Rams yesterday, so that was a nice day. Got one play going tonight in college football. And then on Saturday, I've got a 5% and right now 4% plays up on the Saturday card. Still working on the NFL, but looking for another big weekend in football action.
All right. Well, we're excited here because Dave Cokin joining us. And Dave, I know you are locked and loaded, my friend. You got a whole lot of great things coming up. You've got NHL next week. You still have a 5% best bet heading into the season available at your page. I know you got college football, MLB, the playoffs. A lot going on, my friend. It's a good time of year.
Yeah, it's busy. Good result for me as well with the Rams. Looks like it was a clean sweep here on the LA Rams last night. Off to a pretty good start in the baseball playoffs. Haven't lost one yet. Baseball playoffs, by the way, the last 3 years, I'm sitting at 15-5-1. So this has been pretty good for me. College football, need to get that straightened out this weekend. I have 5 plays tomorrow. One of them is a free selection. You can check that out right now on my Wager Talk homepage, which is wt.buzz/DC. 3 NFL plays, one of which I mentioned was the Rams. They already won. 2 more on Sunday, and that includes a 5% play. 5% plays for 2 calendar years now, going back to October 2019. All sports, 27-9, which is a great run on these infrequent plays. And there are actually 2 5% plays up right now. The NHL over and under points selection, which is only $9, and the Sunday NFL play, which I feel very good about this play. Let's put it that way. So check them out. And I don't have plays on any of the 4 games we're going to talk about today, but I've got opinions, and hopefully those will work out pretty nicely as well.
All right. There it is. 5% play, guys. Locked and loaded here. No reason not to head over to Wager Talk and visit Dave Cokin, Bryan, Leonard, and Rob Veno. And we're going to start, guys, with a ACC battle. Let's do it, Robert. Or Pac-10's good. We can do Big Ten also. Michigan State, Rutgers seems like it's a good idea, but I kind of like Florida State, so we'll go there. 64 for a total. Opens up at 17. That's a big number, Rob Veno. Can you imagine we're at a point right now in Florida State that they are a 17-point underdog against UNC? Boy, what a difference a couple of years makes. What do you think we're going to get here?
Yeah, they really haven't shown a whole bunch of improvement, Joe. on either side of the football so far this year. You do get Jordan Travis as your number one quarterback again, and it probably makes a bit of a difference. Jordan Travis far better as a dual threat than Mackenzie Milton is. Overall, statistically, they're both kind of the same. It gives them a little more diversity in their ground game. Last week against Duke, North Carolina basically just put a bullseye on Mateo Durant's number 21 on his uniform for Duke. They shut him down, and I think Duke proved to everybody that when they can't run the football, they're just helpless offensively. They've put up some big numbers this year, but it's always been when they've run the football. Last week, North Carolina shut it down, got that team, kept them quiet on the scoreboard. It's not really the exact same with Florida State, but they'll probably look to make Travis a passer in this particular contest. I think one edge that Florida State should try to exploit, which Duke did very well last week, is put pressure on Sam Howell. North Carolina's pass protection has been lousy. 22 sacks allowed already in 5 games for an All-American type quarterback with really good receivers. Just doesn't have a lot of time back there. FSU has 16 sacks this season, but only 2 in the last 2 weeks. So that'll be an interesting matchup there. If Howell gets time, I think he'll shred this secondary, which is susceptible to big plays. FSU has given up 10 touchdowns already this season outside of the red zone, and UNC has scored 12 outside of the red zone. So it shows you the explosiveness that could happen in that matchup for North Carolina. If I had to, I think I would lean toward the over in this game, similar to the game with Georgia Tech a couple of weeks back. Sam Howell missed a few passes last week that could have resulted in North Carolina points and put a few more on the board for Duke. If he hits those here against Florida State, this one probably gets over the number.
All right, looking at the over, and let me ask you, Bryan, there is, I believe, some wet weather in the forecast by the time kickoff comes around. So how do you look at these two teams?
Yeah, you always have to take a look at the weather, that especially when you're playing totals, as Rob does. That's something you got to be ahead of. These are two teams, at least for me, regardless of what side you're playing here, you got to hold your nose when you're betting that team because neither team has been consistently good all season. They have not played well. Rob hit on one of my big points, and that's the North Carolina team. Sacks versus. They allowed 6 sacks when they played Virginia Tech, 8 when they played Georgia Tech, 5 when they played Duke. Florida State has the athletes to get in the backfield, but really when you're looking at Florida State, they had done well the first 3 games, but last 2 games against Louisville and Syracuse, only 1 sack each. North Carolina's got the better skill position players. They've got the better quarterback, obviously. Not looking good this year because the offensive line hasn't played well, and he lost a lot of his better players to the NFL. But if I'm looking for scoring, I think I can get it out of North Carolina. Florida State's another team that I just don't know what I'm going to get. You take a look at yards per play. Florida State has outgained the opposition in all but 1 game this year in yards per play. That was last week against Syracuse, and that's unfortunate. Strangely enough, that was the game they won. So these are 2 teams right now that are really hard for me to handicap. There's so many other games on the board. I think North Carolina will put some points up on the board as long as they can keep their quarterback up and healthy in this game. But to be able to choose a side here, I just can't do it. There's better games on the board.
Well, there's a lot of games on the board here, Dave. But, boy, what a difference a couple of years makes with this Florida State program. Rain, no rain, does it make a difference on how you approach handicapping this game?
No, wind is more important to me than rain. Rain's not that big a deal. Florida State's just not very good anymore. Okay? I think their fans are living in the past, and they're just an average program, and that's it. And the quarterback, Travis, has some ability, but he also is a mistake. He makes mistakes. I don't like anything about this Florida State team right now. I know they finally got a win. They beat Syracuse, but what does that mean? North Carolina's been Jekyll and Hyde so far. Their 2 road games at Virginia Tech and at Georgia Tech, they'd just as soon forget them. Those were 2 really bad games. They couldn't get any offense going against a good Virginia Tech defense, and they just got shut down, destroyed. at Georgia Tech. That was a completely lopsided game. But at home, they've been a monster. They've played better defense at home, and their offense has been sensational in Chapel Hill. They've got a revenge motive here from a game I think they will probably tell you they should have won last year. I don't think Florida State can stay with them. And we've already seen a couple of games this year where Florida State kind of gave up. And I think that's, once a team shows that tendency, it has a tendency to repeat itself. I made the game 18. I would only side with North Carolina here. If the Tar Heels get a chance to beat the stuffing out of Florida State, I think they're going to do it. And I think Florida State might kind of cave in the second half if that's the case. If they hang around early, might be a high-scoring and an entertaining game. But I have a tendency to think this one's going to get lopsided, and I would prefer North Carolina.
All right, Lynn, North Carolina in that one, ACC battle. We're going to move on to, good Lord, I have no idea. Where are we going, Rob? All right, now we're going Big Ten. Let's go Michigan State taking on Rutgers in this one. 4 for an open total of 50. And Bryan, let me come to you. Tell me what you think Michigan State. Some waiting for the wheels to fall off. Do they fall off this week?
This is interesting because I play the openers when Circa puts them out. And the only one that I found value on the opening line was Rutgers +4. Go to bed, wake up the next day, the number's Rutgers +5. Normally I'm looking to beat the closing line in these games, and I'm thinking, well, shit, I must have missed something there. Well, now I see the latest lines, and we're back down to basically what it was originally with the 4. Michigan State's a team that they've taken care of the football this year. They lost the turnover battle against Northwestern in the first game, and they still win that game by 17. And then the last 4 games, they've won the turnover battle in every single one of them. Rutgers has done a pretty good job in that regard, except for last week against Ohio State, -3 in turnovers. Both teams have done a really good job protecting their quarterbacks. Michigan State's plus on sacks all season long, and the only game that Rutgers wasn't plus on sacks, or at least even, was against Michigan. So it's interesting that I think both offenses here, both these teams are known for the defenses, but I think both their offenses could have a little bit of success here. I liked Rutgers coming into the week. That's the side that I prefer at the +4, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit more offense in these games. You take a look at what Michigan's done, against Northwestern, 8.1 yards per play. Against Miami, 6.3. Against Western Kentucky last week, 7.1. So they've had success moving the football. And overall, Rutgers has done a pretty good job defensively, except for last week against Ohio State, a team that's looked terrible early in the season, but may end up, and I think they will end up being the class of this conference. We talked in earlier videos about Iowa and Penn State. I still think Ohio State wins this conference here, but I like Rutgers plus the 4 in what I think may be a little bit higher scoring game than what others think.
All right, might be a little more, a few more points than most think. Dave, let me ask you here, this Michigan State, are you a believer in them? Are they an average team, above average in your mind? What do you got them at?
Well, they're unbeaten. So, they're doing something right. Tucker's done a nice job with this team. And I don't think they're outstanding at anything in particular, but they're playing sound, fundamental football. Last week against Western Kentucky, they could have won that game by 40. They kind of relaxed in the second half, up a ton. They were up 29, and a couple of garbage scores. I would call them garbage scores for Western Kentucky. The game had already been settled, so it got a little more respectable. But they dominated that game. The way to beat the way to beat Michigan State, I think, is to be able to throw deep on them. I think they could be a little bit vulnerable in the secondary to a really good quarterback. Unfortunately, Rutgers really doesn't do that. I went into this game thinking this might be a good spot for Rutgers. And I still think in some ways it is. Maybe getting a little value here because Rutgers got smashed last week by the Buckeyes, and Michigan State wasn't a very easy winner, and they're unbeaten. So the Michigan State bandwagon has gotten a little bit crowded. The problem is the matchup for me. Rutgers doesn't do what it appears Michigan State is most vulnerable to. And that to me, makes it really tough to play Rutgers here. I think they've got a chance in the football game, but they're going to have to establish something on the ground and do a good job defending Michigan State. And Michigan State's running game is starting to look pretty good. I don't think they've got a great quarterback, and I don't know that the passing game is anything more than a decent fundamental intermediate type passing game. But the Spartans' running game is starting to come around. So, I think maybe the little line value in Rutgers, but maybe Michigan State ascending a bit and living up more to their record, which I thought was a bit phony, as opposed to Rutgers. And look, they do have to show the ability to bounce back off a throttling, because they got absolutely murdered last week at Ohio State. In the first half, it was just a slaughter. So I think I would lean to Michigan State, but there's no chance of betting this game. It's pretty much an easy pass for me. Probably learn a little more about these two teams in this game.
Yeah, it's Dave brings up a good point here, Rod. This game in the trenches is fascinating. You got a Michigan State team averages about 6 yards a carry here. You got the kid Walker the third there, who he's racking up over 100 yards a game here on the ground. Who do you think wins in the trenches in this one?
Yeah, that's probably the $100,000 question, Joe. I would echo my view being the exact same as the way Dave ended his analysis. Power rating showed me that there's value on the Rutgers side. I made Michigan State a much lower favorite in this one, 1.5. So to Bryan's point, +4 looked pretty good. But when I look at the matchup, it's really hard, and there's too many counter arguments here. First off, I don't know if it counts as real revenge, but in Mel Tucker's first season last year, they got beat by Rutgers, 38-27. At that time last year, a little bit embarrassing, right? I think Rutgers has been established a little more as a decent program now than they were at the time when Michigan State lost to them. For the Rutgers side, it's, you could consider this a step down in class. Their last 2 games were against Michigan and Ohio State. Those are 2 of your best teams in the Big Ten, and now you get Michigan State. Both teams are 4-1 against the number, so they both provide pretty good value. I think if you're looking at the total, Michigan State played 5 games this year. 4 of them have gone over this number of 51. For Rutgers, 3 of their 5 have gone over this number of 51. So maybe that's why that number has climbed a little bit. But when I look at the Rutgers offense, guys, it's hard. It's really hard. If you take out the Delaware game, which was their best offensive game of the year against an FCS team, they only gained 4.3 yards per play. That's a miserable number for FBS football. And the other side has explosiveness. Talked about Kenneth Walker already in the running game, but I would venture to say that, when you watch that Miami game, Peyton Thorne, the quarterback here, and Jaden Reed are ex-high school teammates who have a great rapport, and they shredded Miami of Florida. Do you believe Miami of Florida's defense is on par with Rutgers? Probably. Miami may have more talent. Schiano's probably a better coach and gets more out of his, but player for player, they're probably just as good. Michigan State's very well balanced, 210 on the ground, 256 through the air. The problem you have with them, Joe, is that they've built a lot of their numbers on soft defenses. Northwestern stinks against the run. Running for what they did against them doesn't mean anything. Nebraska ran all over them again last week. Duke ran all over Northwestern. Running, gaining big yards against Western Kentucky, against Youngstown State. None of that means anything. They did beat Miami, but in that Nebraska game, which is the one that I'll use here, they could only put up 254 total yards against a really good defense. So, like I say, there's counter arguments all over the place in this game. Some power rating value towards the Rutgers side, but I think overall the matchup does favor Michigan State, because if there's a team you trust to make a big play or move the ball up and down the field here, it's not Rutgers, it's Michigan State. Turnovers may decide it. In that case, I'll have to step aside and pass on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for sure there, certainly from a handicapping perspective. This one may get a little bit easier. We'll see what the guys think about a little SEC matchup. How about the Hogs and Ole Miss. Little Lane Kiffin taking on Arkansas here. Opens up Ole Miss -4. A total of 65. And David, the question is, to me, is Arkansas's defense better than a good Ole Miss offense? If we know the answer to that, we probably have the winner here.
No, it's not. But it's decent. And I don't think Ole Miss is putting up a 40 spot in this game. Excuse me. A couple reasons that I'll say that. One is that Arkansas does have a pretty good defense. The second is I'm pretty sure I know what the Razorbacks are going to do offensively in this game. They're not going to play up tempo. I can tell you that. They're going to try and work the clock, get some possessions that take time off the clock, and play ball control, because you don't want to get in a shootout with Ole Miss. And what we're seeing from Arkansas so far, they stepped way out of their class last week against Georgia. Georgia's either the first or second best team in the country right now. So let's discount that. And actually in the second half, maybe Georgia had it salted away, but I thought Arkansas showed us what they can do in the second half defensively, at least containing Georgia to some extent, and kind of saw what their game plan might be for this game. So I don't think Arkansas can stay with Ole Miss for 60 minutes. I think Ole Miss wins the game, but that spread's a little bit high. But where I do think there might be an edge here is, if I'm right in terms of the approach that Arkansas is going to take for this game, I think you got a live play on the under. And again, I'm not a real heavy totals guy, to put it mildly, but that's what the game plan to me shapes up as, knowing what I know about Pittman so far and knowing what Pittman certainly knows about the fast break that Kiffin wants to run. I think he's going to do what he can to keep his defense fresh, and to maybe frustrate Ole Miss with ball control drives. I don't think they'll get to 60. The mid-60s looks too much to me in this game. I think Ole Miss wins it, but this could be one of those 31-27 type games, maybe 34-27. Better play to me than the side is on the under.
So, Robbie, it's interesting, too. I believe Mingo is out for Ole Miss there. So one of Corral's weapons is down, which means they're probably going to spend more time on Drummond here. And that Arkansas defense take away the best weapon. Do you give them a shot to pull the upset here?
Yeah, they're so deep, Joe. I mean, let's say Jerry and Ely is out as well. Their most productive dual threat running back. Now they've got other running backs. Snoop Connor plays in this one. And aside from Mingo and Drummond, and Braylon Sanders has been in that program a long time. So maybe they have enough weapons. But this is the ultimate cat and mouse game. I mean, last year, Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator, skip right by Sam Pittman here. Barry Odom is the guy who's credited with forming the blueprint on how to stop Ole Miss. He played that 3-2-6, which Iowa State's DC has made famous across college football. Now dropped 8 into coverage. Matt Corral threw 6 picks, 2 went for touchdowns, and all of a sudden everybody, right up until Alabama last week, has copied that style of defense. So Mississippi coming in, obviously Matt Corral said he learned a lot of lessons. He's done nothing but study tape since that day. And interesting enough, Barry Odom and Sam Pittman both this week said they will not come with the same identical game plan, according to head coach Pittman. If we come with the same defensive game plan, they'll pick us apart. So they've added some wrinkles here. What those wrinkles are, we're not sure of because they're not going to tell you. But I would assume after watching how much pressure Alabama was able to get on Mississippi last week, there might be some disguised blitzes, more pressure packages in my mind from Arkansas this year, as opposed to the dropping 8 into coverage consistently of last year. It's a cat and mouse. Who can win that, struggle Mississippi offense against Arkansas defense is the question here. I think my problem with Arkansas is they look tremendous against Texas. They look tremendous against A&M, and especially on the defensive and offensive front, which is where SEC football games are won and lost. But last week, Georgia comes in without JT Daniels. They come in with Stetson Bennett, and they decide they're going to scrap their air raid, and they're going to run it down Arkansas's throat. And guess what? they uprooted that Arkansas defensive front easily, to say the least. They ran it, and they ran it some more. And now I have questions about how good Arkansas is across the front. Mississippi does, despite the fact that it's a high-flying offense, their preference is to run the football first. This is an Art Briles, Baylor style offense. So will they hold up against Mississippi's O-line? Maybe, but I think Mississippi might be able to move the football a little bit here. It's an interesting start time, 11 a.m. I don't think it'll bother either side here. In the end, I would say that I probably trust Ole Miss's big play capability a little bit more because KJ Jefferson, the quarterback for Arkansas, is still banged up. And Ole Miss may sell out defensively against the run and force him to beat them through the air. I don't know that he could do that. Even if the game is slowed down, it doesn't generally take Ole Miss a lot of time to score. But again, Matt Corral is going to have to feel out what they're doing to him defensively because he's not going to see the same thing he saw last year. If I had to, I'd have a lean towards Ole Miss in this game.
Yeah, if Jefferson doesn't have a solid running attack there, that play action ain't going to work, and that's where he thrives there. Bryan, what do you think? I'm seeing a team total of 36 here for Ole Miss. I mean, do you think they get close to 40 points? And if you do, you should lay the points, no?
I think that's the way you have to look at it. I think it's somewhat correlated. If you like Mississippi, you lay the points. If you if you like the over, you take Mississippi. If you like the under, you take Arkansas. Interesting to note, these two teams played the best two teams in college football last week. I think everybody's pretty confident that that's the case. We'll find out as the season goes on. But as of right now, Georgia and Alabama are clearly the best two. Arkansas gets beat 37-0. Ole Miss gets beat 42-21. Popular underdog last week. I was on them. So neither one lived up to expectations. But keep in mind, Mississippi had the prior week off. They were game planning for Alabama. They have an extra week to prepare, and then they come out and Bama does whatever they want to them. They outgained them by 160 yards, 9 first downs. Outgained yards per play, 5.9 to 4.6. So I think it's more of a disappointment for Ole Miss against Alabama because they really were pointing towards that game. Arkansas has been a surprise all season. I said before the season started, this could be the best team in college football that doesn't meet their over-under for season wins because the schedule is so tough. Last 2 weeks playing Texas A&M and Georgia. I don't think Texas A&M is that good. Georgia obviously is very good, but I was more impressed when Arkansas took on Texas and wins that game 40-21. Yards per play, 7.1 to 4.0. Since that game, Texas has really come around to show that they are a legitimate team going bowling in this season. So everything that was said, I agree with just about all of it. I know Ole Miss has got the better personnel. They could score in no time. But this Arkansas team, I like the way the team is coached. I don't think they're too disappointed after losing to Georgia. Sure, you're upset when you get shut out. I think that's a benefit when you get shut out to play them the next week. But it brings them back down to size a little bit, and I think get back to where they wanted to go. I think the change of quarterback for Georgia last week was something that they weren't really all the way prepared for. So it changed their game plan a little bit. So I think Arkansas catching the 6 here is the way I would look at it. Not one of my stronger plays on the week, but probably my strongest play out of the 4 we're going to discuss today.
All right. Should be a good game, though. Should be an awful lot of fun to watch. We do have one other game that should also be, well, maybe not that much fun to watch. Roll it up. Boy, this is Boise State taking on BYU. 5-0 BYU here, Dave. Opened up at 3.5 at home. 55 as a total here. What do you think of this Boise State team? Some people think they might be a little bit overvalued, but BYU, pretty tough to beat them at home, isn't it?
Well, Boise's not overvalued anymore. They might have been, and they probably have been for a few years, but they're definitely not overvalued anymore because the betting market thinks they suck, and they're probably right. Okay, so those days are gone. Sorry, Boise State fans, and I know they've got a great fan base, but they're I made the reference. I think it was I was doing a podcast with Steve Cofield last night and was talking about Boise State. And in some ways, they now resemble UNLV basketball. A team, not UNLV basketball obviously was bigger because it won national championships. It was the best program in the country. But Boise was for years by far the best mid-major program in the country. They were the team every year. It's like, well, I wonder how Boise could do in this game against number 1 or number 2. And the fact is, they could probably compete with most of those teams. UNLV basketball stopped being relevant a long time ago. And their fan base is still stuck in the 1990s, thinking that, the Rebels are just one player away from being back to an Elite 8 or Final 4. It's finally started to sink into UNLV fans. I think Boise State fans are going to have to go through the same thing now. This is a program that has been really good for a long time, but has been getting worse each year. And now they're just kind of an okay mid-major program, and that's about it. They don't have the personnel that they were getting under Chris Peterson. When Peterson was recruiting some really good players, some guys who were heading to the NFL. They're not getting those guys anymore. The Bluefield mystique has worn off. Nobody's intimidated by that anymore. They're not very good, and they got the shit kicked out of them last week by Nevada. It's as simple as that. Nevada was the much better team in that game. So if it sounds like I'm making a big case for BYU, well, here's the other side of it. I think BYU is overrated. They're unbeaten in the Pac-12. They went 3-0 against Pac-12 opponents, so right now they're the only unbeaten team in that conference, even though they're not in that conference. But I've seen them play every game this year, and I think a couple of things have happened. Number one, they managed to beat Arizona, but Arizona's horrible. And in retrospect, it wasn't a great performance by BYU. They weren't dominant by any means against Utah, okay, in the Holy War. You can make an argument that if it weren't for a couple of blunders on the Utah side, which were not forced by BYU, but were just mistakes by Utah, Utah might have won that game. Now they're playing in what won't be quite as hostile an atmosphere because it's an earlier game. That place at night, forget about it. You don't want to go in there at night. But in the afternoon, it's not as intimidating. So it's one of those games where I don't want Boise, period. I'm looking for spots to go against them. But I don't think this is one of them. I think they might be able to compete with a BYU team. They get Hall back, and that's significant. But I don't know how healthy he is because early in the week he was questionable. So it looks like he's been upgraded and is going to play. But Hall's a dual threat quarterback, and I don't know how much he's going to be, whether his mobility is compromised or not. I don't know. I think BYU is going to win. If I had to bet the game, I'd bet BYU. But the market's already blasted the Cougars here. They've driven the line up a couple of points. Value's gone. And again, I'm not sure BYU is all they're cracked up to be. But I'm telling you, Boise's a team that at this point, I'm so pissed at myself for not playing Nevada last week. I had a strong opinion that was going to happen in that game, and I didn't back Nevada. I just left the game alone, and I paid for it. That to me is like a loser. When you know a side's the right side and you don't play it, it feels like a loser. This one I'm not nearly as tempted to play BYU, but that's still the only side I would play.
All right, still likes leaning BYU in this one. Bryan just feels like, I don't know, maybe that offensive front of BYU is going to do whatever they want to do to that defensive front of Boise. How do you think, well, what are we going to get out of these two teams?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Dave said. BYU -3 obviously was a good bet. BYU -6, I'm not so sure. Keep in mind, last week, BYU travels to Utah State. It was a Thursday game, I believe, maybe Friday. But they were -9 on the road to Utah State. The prior week, Boise State was -9.5 on the road to Utah State. Now, that would make probably the line BYU 3 here. If you're just taking a look at it from now, well, the line's 6. And so that means there's no longer value on BYU here. They look good against Utah State. They outgained them 7.1 to 4.0 compared to, Boise was outgained 6.1 to 5.4. Both teams had a +2 turnover differential in those games, so that's what really was the reason why they won. But I don't think we're getting a lot of value here at Boise. You take a look at the teams that Boise's played on the road. Central Florida, they lose that game by 5. We're outgained by 290 yards. What has Central Florida done since then? Not a whole lot. They haven't been nearly as good as they had been in the past. And then that Utah State game where they get outgained by 0.7. It was just the turnovers there. So don't want Boise because Dave's right. They've peaked and they're living off their reputation at this point. Don't see any value here. BYU 3 was a great bet. 6. I can't play them. But if somehow this game gets up to 7, this will be a spike bet for me, and I'll be on Boise State. But just because the line has gone too far away from what you just looked at from the lines playing Utah State 9.5 and 9 the last 2 weeks. Can't pass up that value. If we see a 7, I'm on Boise. If we don't, I sit back and watch.
All right. And Rob, talk to me here. Approach it from maybe a point perspective, from a total. Do you think we're going to see more offense, or do you think this might come down to be a little bit more of a defensive battle?
Well, first off, I'll align myself with the 2 guys ahead of me where Boise State's concerned. It's a one-dimensional offense at this point in time. They cannot run the football. They have to rely on Bachmeier. They don't protect him really well. He's a statue back there. He's not much of a runner. It causes a lot of problems. So therefore, you have to look BYU or you don't look at all. The run defense for Boise, this is where the game starts and finishes for me, Joe. I mean, there was a lot of questions about Brigham Young's offensive line heading into this season. Last year, they were tremendous, but they played a lousy schedule. I don't argue that they didn't play a lousy schedule, but they were tremendous on the offensive line. This year, they're just as good. Boise has given up 255 rushing yards to Central Florida, 246 rushing yards to Oklahoma State, who, by the way, did nothing but run the football. Hey, Boise, we're going to run. And they still couldn't stop them. 235 rushing yards to Utah State. And to the point in that game, guys, Utah State racks up 443 yards and scores 3 points. To put that into context, that's 1 point every 147.7 yards gained. Are you kidding me? That's probably why we see such a gap in the line now. Bryan pointed out how each team was 9 or 9.5 on the road, but the results were, at least statistically, were tremendously different. BYU didn't get hit nearly as hard total yardage-wise as did Boise. Boise just lucked out because Utah State kept turning the ball over. Algier and Katoa probably run like crazy here. Dave mentioned Jaron Hall coming back here. He's practiced all week long. That's a weird situation. I don't know what the injury is. It's been undisclosed the whole time. Reading between the lines, I feel like it might have been COVID. And he's going to be fine. But I'm not sure what that really was. But he has practiced this week. He brings a dual threat ability, which makes it even harder on Boise to stop the running game. And then he's not the thrower Baylor Romney is. Baylor Romney's completing 80% of his passes. But, boy, he can balance out the offense just as well. They've got good receivers. So I don't know how Boise stops them. Again, with the one-dimensional offense, BYU's likely to pin their ears back and come after the quarterback here. They've been hit through the air by some teams this year. The Arizona game, it was mostly second half, but they gave up a lot of passing yards, 345. They gave up passing yards to ASU, 265. And they gave up passing yards last week to Utah State, 314. But even with all those passing yards, not one of those teams came within 10 points of Brigham Young. So to me, you have to play BYU here if you're going to play at all. Boise's likely to be without their number 2 receiver in this game, which shortens them up a little bit from what they do best. There'll be one guy short. I think back to Charlie Brewer, the other stationary quarterback that BYU played, and they didn't do much offensively in that game. So if you're going to bet total, I think you would bet over, feeling like, maybe Boise can put up 21. But in my mind, BYU is going to get to 38 here if they really want to with Hall at quarterback. So I think it would have to be BYU for me.
two trends here. One to go to Dave's point that this ain't your dad's Boise State. Not since 2001 have they entered the 5th game of a season with a losing record, which is exactly what they're doing right now. And oh yeah, BYU to date has never trailed in a game yet. So interesting stuff, and doubt very much that'll happen again here in this one. But we shall see, guys. That's going to be 3:30 on, like I said, early start out west, Provo, Utah, BYU, and Boise State. All right, well, when we put it all together here, these 4 games, let's get an idea of which way these guys might be leaning. One game maybe they like a little bit more than the other. And Rob, I'll come back to you. Kick us off. Which one of these 4 are you leaning towards more than the others?
Yeah, I'm going to backtrack just a second here, Joe. Back to that Arkansas game against Ole Miss. There was a situational point I wanted to make about that game and failed to do so. For Arkansas, it's the 3rd straight game away from Fayetteville. 3 straight on the road, and they've been real emotional games. The A&M in Jerry World was emotional. Then you come back and you have to play Georgia with Pittman going back to Athens, that whole storyline, and to see if they had, made any improvement as a program. That was emotional. And now you're coming to play Ole Miss, a division rival. It could be that Arkansas runs out of gas in this game. We'll see. It would show up in the second half if it shows up at all. Listen, we were assigned 4 tough games here for me as far as, what are you going to play? What are you not going to play? So I'm going to use the best bet on what I talked about last, BYU. It'll just be a straight fade of Boise, and it'll be a play on the strength versus weakness matchup. Anytime you can run the football down somebody's throat and you have the better defense, then I'll be on that side. That team also is at home here. And it's under a touchdown. I mean, can they win this game 27-20 and cash a ticket? Of course they can. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. So for all the reasons I stated earlier, I'll play BYU -6 as the best bet for the show.
All right, leaning a little bit towards BYU in that one. Bryan, how about you? Which one of these are you leaning towards a little bit more than the other?
Yeah, nice point by Rob regarding the Arkansas being a little bit tired, possibly on the road. May want to get you involved in the first half at +3 or +3.5 out there with a little bit of juice on Arkansas. If you're looking to play the side, no need to hurry out there. Sitting at 5.5 right now. Gets down to 4, no big deal. If it gets up to 6, a bigger deal. Give me Arkansas, but in no need to hurry on it right now at 5.5. Just keep an eye on it. If we don't see the 6, maybe Arkansas first half may be the better bet. Catching the 3.5, but I prefer the Arkansas side here.
All right, liking the Arkansas side. Also, first half in that BYU matchup, 3.5s are out there for BYU in the first half. Dave, in addition to the 5% NHL play, I know you got a 5% NFL play up and ready to rock and roll. So tell us exactly which way you're leaning here, and tell us a little bit more about the leans that might be available for folks to check out on your Twitter page.
Yeah, if you follow me on Twitter at Dave Cokin, I published my college and NFL leans. These are plays that I like to some extent, but that didn't make the cut for one reason or another. If you want the analysis as to why they didn't make the cut, that's on the free picks page, I think, or it's on my homepage. I know that. And so check those out. If you just want the games, you can follow me at Dave Cokin. And again, they're leans, so I'm not betting them. If you want to mess around with them, go ahead. Best bet of the show? Well, look, if we talk about Boise State fans perhaps living in the past on glories of previous years, that doesn't compare to Florida State fans.
Oof.
That's not a very good program anymore. And they don't have the excuse. Boise has an excuse. They're, no offense to Boise, but it's kind of the middle of nowhere, and they're the Mountain West Conference. It's not like the networks want to roll into Boise every week to do a game. They're probably just as happy. To be honest with you, the networks are probably happy that Boise's not relevant anymore. But Florida State, that's a program that should never have gotten to the point they've gotten now. And they're a mess. They are an average at best ACC program, and I think that's actually being kind. And they're just not getting the players they used to get. The coach doesn't seem to be connecting. They look like they're becoming a program that might be going through a new coach every 3 years because the expectations are so high, but the product isn't very good anymore. And they're going in this weekend facing a North Carolina team that has been Jekyll and Hyde this year. The handsome Dr. Jekyll has been showing up in Chapel Hill. The ugly Mr. Hyde has been those 2 road games at Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. This game's in Chapel Hill. I think North Carolina will show no mercy because teams still get fired up to play Florida State. That's what really makes it difficult with the Seminoles is they've still got the name appeal that brings out the best in superior opponents. I think North Carolina crushes them in this game.
All right, North Carolina putting their foot down here, guys. A hell of a week number 6 in college football. It's lining up to be, and of course, all week long on the College Football Daily, we've given you opportunities with all of these guys, and we'll see if we can't round all those plays up for you and give you a pretty good idea on what we're looking at. But I do want to ask Rob Veno, because I always like to throw him on the spot. So, Rob, hypothetical, if Cincinnati and BYU run the table, who's got a better shot at making the college football playoff?
I would believe it's Cincinnati. I don't even know that there's a question about it. I would say Cincinnati, undoubtedly.
Interesting enough.
So would I.
Yeah. Cincinnati as well. All right.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I mean, look, it sounds good, but it really isn't. And I keep joking about it. BYU is unbeaten in the Pac-12. I'm not sure that means anything. Pac-12 is not very good. Okay?
Yep.
That might work against the Cougars.
Yep, I love that. All right, guys, here you are. Replay of all the plays from this past week. Tuesday, of course, you got Bryan Leonard there with Houston laying 6. That was a winner. Winner, chicken dinner. If you guys so important to make sure you hit that bell in the upper right-hand corner, guys, and make sure that you hop on board the day of, especially with these early week plays. Of course, you have Wednesday's show with Rob, Drew, and Steve Merrill, and yesterday with Tony Mahiba and Teddy, and of course the guys here again today, ready to go. Those are the plays, and we want to remind you, just hit that bell in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll get notified every time this show goes live during the week. Plenty of opportunities to make it a profitable weekend, though, with Bryan Leonard ready to go here. Baseball, of course, NFL, college football. And don't forget, Rob Veno also locked and loaded in the MLB playoffs, college football, and the NFL. Make sure you guys check them out at WagerTalk.com. So there you go. On behalf of Rob Veno, Bryan Leonard, Dave Cokin, guys, have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Best of luck with your plays. Come back and join us again next week as we get you ready for week 7 of the college football season. We'll talk to you then. Good luck, guys.
Why pay regular price when you can save money on every purchase with WagerBucks at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo? WagerBucks are now eligible for use on not just daily, 3-day, and 7-day passes, but all long-term and seasonal packages up to 1 full year. There are tons of options available for every budget and size of better, from as low as $90 gets $100, all the way up to $3,500 gets you $5,000. Save every day on every pick you buy with WagerBucks.